Good morning, legends. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Luke from Astro Awakening. In this video, I'll be talking about the full moon in Cancer. It is currently the 14th of January at 6:38 a.m. We're about a little under 2 hours away from the exact full moon in Cancer. Full moon in Cancer conjunct Mars and sextiling Uranus. And Mars is in its retrograde cycle. So this sort of highlights that Mars retrograde cycle. Mars has just retrograded back into the sign of Cancer over the last few days. And we're going to have Mars retrograding right through to the 24th of February. So this is a definite peak along that cycle, as has been the Mars opposite Pluto alignments that have occurred. We've had two already. We'll have another one in April. So these are real defining moments along that retrograde cycle. Definitely with a full moon, and every full moon, we're going to be dealing with emotional release, things coming to the surface, becoming more aware of our subconscious patterns. And in Cancer, we're becoming aware of some of our emotional responses and how we're choosing to respond. Also, we've got to consider that we've got a Capricorn sun. And Capricorn and Cancer is like responsibility, accomplishment, achievement, success, obligations, discipline. And Cancer is the home, our family, our emotions, our feelings, and how we sort of respond to events and circumstances, how we emotionally respond, what we also need to feel safe and secure. So before we get into the full moon, I just want to talk a little bit about the Californian fires. And there's a lot of information coming out. And, from something that's such to the scale that this is, there's always going to be an element of this where there an agenda behind this? Who did it? How did they do it? Was it intentional? Was it man-made? Was it accidental? Were it just the right conditions and all of that? And there's a lot of information. We have Jupiter in Gemini at the moment, so we're getting a lot of information. We've got to use discernment with that information. And there's a lot of theories. What there isn't is a definite answer or a definite knowing, but we could sort of surmise that there's some fuckery at foot. So one thing that I'm seeing a lot of is this emotional response to this particular outrage of what's going on, or the devastation, or the fact that it could have been, there was no fire, no water in the hydrants type thing, and this sort of planning or pre-planning of the response to this and the failure of that, and then people's outrage and their emotional sort of loose energy that they're giving to this, and we've got Mars retrograde in Cancer, so. One thing astrology helps us understand is not so much what's going on, but how we're responding to what's going on. And Mars retrograde in Cancer, we don't want to be, reactive in overwhelm, and sort of losing our emotional center in this sense. We want to be very mindful because when we feed into things, our attention, our awareness, our focus, and then we give it emotional energy, we're sort of charging it. And if there is any sort of dark agenda behind these types of things that are occurring. We're providing the fuel by how we're choosing to see it and how we're responding emotionally to it. And the fact of the matter is, we're not really going to really ever know. And even if we did know, let's say it came out and we know who did it and how they did it and why they did it, all these things, is there going to be any repercussions, or is there anything that individually you could do in relation to that? And by becoming aware, you could say, well, awareness gives you some sort of level of understanding that you can then navigate, perhaps. But then, even if there was some sort of nefarious agenda at foot here, and it was discovered exactly who and how and what and all of those things, individually, what can the individual do about that? Is there anything we can do about that? And this reminds me of a book that I read recently, actually probably a year or so ago. It was Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare by Michael Hoffman. I'll flash it up here for you. And this is a really interesting book on the process of secret societies, their agenda, how they communicate to one another, and, going right back to the first atomic bomb, the killing of the king, the assassination of JFK, and right through to where we are now. And what that book sort of lays out, with a lot of backed up data, is to sort of suggest exactly where we're at on this, journey. And in relation to what the secret societies represent, and their agenda. And where we are right now is what's known as the revelation of the method, revealing how they're doing it or who's doing it. And it's almost like part, if you read that book, it's like part of their whole process that began like in the 40s was to sort of say, well, this is who we are and this is what we're doing, and there's nothing you can do about it. And part of that, there's nothing you can do about it, is to reveal the method, revelation of the method. Hey, well, yeah, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. Directed energy weapons, smart meters, whatever the case may be. So, if you read that book, you sort of get a perspective that you can apply to world events now in the sense of becoming the observer in a detached way. Um, if you're the observer and you are overwhelmed emotionally because of what's going on, or you're being triggered and you're angry and you're upset and you're, damn, there's something we can do. Why aren't we doing something about this? Can we got to come together? You're feeding then into that negative energy, and you're fueling the very thing that you're trying to, avoid or overcome or change or stop. And you, as an individual, what you've got to understand is that there is nothing that you or I could do. There is nothing. This is happening at a level that we don't have access to. We're not part of the secret handshake club. So what we've got to do is observe from a neutral place, from a very detached place. If you can't, then don't look. It's that simple. Don't feed it into your negative energy. And then we look at the astrology and we see that Mars is retrograde in Cancer. Retrogrades of Mars tend to like disrupt the way in which we express our, drive, our assertion, and our aggression. So in Cancer, there's going to be a lot of emotional turmoil and instability, and we're going to be easily triggered. And what we don't want to be doing is reactive with that energy, because we're feeding into something, we're giving energy, attention, life force to something that we don't want. So observe, detach, become neutral. If you're on the ground, if you're personally affected, if there's something you can physically do, for sure, absolutely. But if you're thousands of miles away and you're on your keyboard and you're on your phone and you can't stop and you're trying to, how do I help, what do I do, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing they can do. What you can do is detach and be the observer. And it's not to say you don't have compassion and you don't care, of course, but to the extent that it ungrounds you and makes you unstable, that's something you should be mindful of, especially when we have Mars retrograde in Cancer and we have a now full moon in Cancer. So bringing us to the astrology of where we find ourselves at the moment and the Cancer full moon. So we've got the Capricorn sun with this moon full in Cancer. I want to bring you back to the new moon that occurred a couple of weeks ago at 9 degrees of Capricorn, and in particular the Sabian symbol associated with that particular degree. It's an albatross feeding from the hand. And again, I use jamesburgess.com, his analysis of the Sabian symbols. Um, I find it resonates a lot with me. So this is radiating peaceful harmony. If we purify the heart, then we radiate love to all beings and trust in the certainty and serenity and joy. Radiating peaceful harmony. We hear the stories of certain characters whose total absorption into the field of kindness enables them to radiate peace and joy. St. Francis of Assisi comes to mind. With them, even wild animals feel trust and surrender their instinctual fear. Trust begets trust, and the world will be free of war when and only when it becomes the prominent mood of our species. Prominent mood of our species as we move into the most of the moodiest moons that we could imagine with the Cancer full moon. So there is the need to balance and bring harmony, and Capricorn is about our obligations and our responsibility and our duties. And Cancer is about our emotions, our feelings, and our need for security. So we've got to take responsibility for our emotional security. We've got to be very mindful that in order to achieve and accomplish anything, we have to have our emotions in check. If we allow our emotions to run riot, we could be full of stamina and motivation and drive, but only for that to wane, and then no effort comes in. We don't have the commitment to continue. If we are feeling down and overwhelmed and tired or helpless, and we allow those emotions to take control, then nothing ever gets done. So we've got to learn to balance these two opposites of commitment, responsibility, and discipline with regards to emotional security and our well-being. And by that, our care and our ability to nurture ourselves and others, to give the expression. You see, Cancer is a cardinal sign. So it's an emotional sign, but it's cardinal in its expression because it wants to give that care. So are you giving from a grounded place? When you want to show care and compassion, are you coming from a grounded place? Your ability to have impact then is going to be profound. But if you're coming from an ungrounded place, then often the shadow side of Cancer is, oh, I'm going to give care with a desire to receive something in return, some form of recognition. Well, I need you to recognize how much I'm caring and look how much I'm giving and look how much I'm doing for you. And again, that's ungrounded. So we're not in the Capricorn quality then. We're totally in the shadow of Cancer and we're insecure. And then we're needing to feel secure by the way in which we express our nurture and care. So becoming mindful of that pattern over this full moon is going to be very helpful in showing where that pattern might be playing out for you in your life and pulling back a little bit. I posted yesterday on my story on Instagram about some core truths with regard to full moon. Full moon is a revelation time, and it might hit to the core of this problem, which is you are the problem, but you are the solution as well. So, first we want to establish responsibility for our emotional security. We don't want to place the responsibility for emotional security onto anyone or thing because then we become dependent on that person or thing. And at the moment, those dependencies might be challenged with Mars retrograde in Cancer. There might be some resentment building or some anger or some frustration. And the shadow aspect of this full moon is that that full moon can bring all of that sort of energy to the surface, and we become really volatile, resentful, frustrated, angry, and reactive in that expression. So that is going to cause some challenges and some problems. So it's becoming mindful of that. Finding a constructive Capricorn outlet for your emotions, Cancer at the moment is going to be really useful. So upping your exercise, going for a run, doing something creative. If you are getting a little unstable and you are angry and you are frustrated, the best thing is to channel that into something, not to repress that energy. Okay, you want to channel that into a constructive outlet, not a deconstructive outlet. Um, what I'm going to be doing, I've been waiting for this full moon because I want to begin a fast, and the best time to fast is on the waning side of the moon cycle, not the waxing. So as the moon's growing in light, where it's not as fortunate when we want to be doing it when the moon is losing its light, when it's leaving, when light is leaving, right? We want to do all of the cleansing and detoxing in that phase of the moon. So I've been waiting for this Cancer full moon. One of the good things about fasting is, and we put in this in the lens of Cancer. Cancer, we're dealing with our emotions, we're dealing with our ego, and we're dealing with our emotional habits. And they can play tricks on us, our emotional habits. They can be really subtle and unconscious, subconscious patterns. Things that we do, think food that we eat, routine we keep. And, what we become is we become comfortable in those habits. We get comfort, we seek security in those habits, but they can become automated. So if you want to shift identity, if you want to shift, your reality, if you want to make some profound changes to the self, if you want to evolve, if you want to work on the self and transform this idea of who you are, then you got to confront the habits that keep you stuck being the old version of yourself. And what I've found through my journey is that the best way to break those habits, it's a little bit cold turkey, is to fast. And there's a 3 day period. Beyond that 3 days, it gets a little easy, but that 3 day period where the ego is outside of its comfort zone. Because normally I'd eat that, or I'd drink that, or I'd do this, or I'd have that little snack, or, I'd arrange my day. Whereas I'm going to go for juice, for 3 day juice fast into a water fast, and I'm going to be in discomfort. And when I get into discomfort, it's the ego that's uncomfortable. And what I'm able to do is just lessen its grip on my identity. And that's what I'm about as we move into 2025. There's actually two main themes that have been coming up in my readings for the year ahead readings. I've done 152 clients since November of their year ahead readings. So looking at the astrological alignments of 2025, as well as their own birth chart and their own cycles and themes, and then sort of putting that all together for people for some clarity and guidance moving forward. And the two things that have been coming up is one is use the first 3 to 6 months of 20, well, 3 to 4 months of 2025 to prepare for the middle of 2025 and the big changes that are coming for all of us in that period of time. And a friend, a dear friend of mine, a colleague, she has said this in the end of 2024. It was one of her mentors had said, "You must be racehorse ready. You must be racehorse ready." And one of her spiritual mentors was like, "Be racehorse ready." And I took that to sort of realize, like, imagine getting a horse ready to race, like a big race, like the Melbourne Cup or something like that, and the preparation that you must have for that horse. It's got to be fed well and trained and not too heavy and not too light. It's got to be in really peak performance, right? So I'm heeding my own advice as we move into this year, and I'm doing some detoxing and cleansing to help sort of become, more refined, less ego driven, and outside of my comfort zone because that's where the change is going to occur. And I highly recommend that you take that sort of point of view as we move into this year towards the middle of next year is like, what do I need to do to prepare myself as best I can for some pretty profound changes in the world and around it in my life, consciously and literally. If you want specific advice for you personally, then I recommend a year ahead session. I'm going to be running them right up to the end of February. The second main theme that came through in a lot of these sessions, there was either a lack of desire or vision. So I don't know what I want, or I can't see what I want. So Mars retrograde, it's been in this cycle since October last year. So if you've lost a little bit of drive and motivation, if that's waned a little bit and you've lost vision, that's okay. What that is a refinement of the old drive, motivations, desires, and vision, and this change process. So reflect now and reevaluate and do some inner work to get clarity again. And maybe the things have changed. Maybe what you wanted isn't what you want anymore. That desire has shifted. Mars retrograde, either what we want or how we get what we want is changing. And it can be a little bit initially like, oh, well, I don't know anymore, or I'm not driven anymore, I can't be bothered anymore. I'm just like, meh. So that'll change. We're almost, yeah, pretty much at the halfway point of its intense retrograde period, December 7th, February 24th. So we're at that halfway point. So things will start to turn now. And as we get closer to its station direct on the 24th of Feb, we should be outside of the real peak period of this. However, Mars will be in retrograde cycle in its shadow or post-shadow period right through till the end of April and into May. So again, we've got time, and now is the time to sort of do some emotional clearing, emotional cleansing, and looking at the habits that you have that are autonomous that allow you to seek out comfort. Yeah. And food, because Cancer full moon, right? So Cancer rules the stomach. And, home is where the heart is, but the way to a man's heart is through his tummy. That saying. Um, so it's like get to the core of the creature comforts and habits that you have. And if you're wondering, like, how do I break through those habits? How do I overcome them? You've got to become aware of them. But what I've found, again, the most effective is fasting. Um, because you don't want to do it. You don't want to not eat. And it's you're uncomfortable in doing that. Initially, what happens for me after about day three is like clarity and feel good, feel clear, and clarity is something that you'll gain from doing something like this because the emotions that we're avoiding by staying in the habits can cloud that clarity and they can overwhelm. And then it can get so sort of like uncertain that we just go, oh, well, just watch the movie, eat the chocolate, do the thing, and we don't really consider, okay, maybe I should cleanse and purify and clear And when you're doing that physically through fasting, and juice fasting, water fasting, those types of things, then you're doing it also energetically and emotionally as well. And that might be something as well if you decide to do something like this, that you're going to get through some emotional release. And off the top of this Cancer full moon, Mars retrograde in Cancer, that's okay. The sextile to Uranus in Taurus, this is the awareness coming for change now. And before any actual change happens, there is just the desire for change first. And if you're desiring something different from where you're at, what you've got to get out of the habit of being that old version of you and break those attachments to those habits. And maybe this full moon in Cancer is the awareness of that, and that can help you navigate towards a change or a shift for you this year. So that's my full moon breakdown, a little different. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, make sure you hit that one and do all the things that you need to do on this platform to do its thing. And I will, if you're interested in a year ahead reading and you haven't had yours yet, I'm running them right through till February. Please get in touch through the website. As always, take care of yourself and each other. Peace out. Cue the balloons.